I'm delighted now to welcome one of the most high-profile politicians in the country, the leader of the Reform Party, Richard Tice. Hi, Richard.
Hi there, Mark. Good afternoon. I definitely watch you on Newsnight every day, all day, Mark.
Well, I do hope you'll be my first guest when I get the gig.
Well, you'd be fantastic. Listen, this issue is of the Northern Ireland Protocol. We saw this coming. We raised it during the general election in 2019 when Boris signed up to his Brexit deal. And yes, it got Brexit done, but we always knew that the victim of this would be Northern Ireland because Boris basically sold them down the river. And we've now got this border down the Irish Sea and all the consequences. You've got empty shelves across supermarkets in Northern Ireland. You've got businesses refusing to export goods from England, Scotland and Wales to Northern Ireland because it's such a pain in the backside with all the paperwork. And the same problem in reverse. And it's completely unacceptable. You've got EU officials over-interpreting the rules. You've got British officials doing the same. And really seriously, Mark, we've now got, loyalists. They saw that when the EU and Ireland and their supporters threatened that if there was a trade, if essentially the border was between the Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, then that might lead to violence. And all of a sudden, the border got moved to the Irish Sea. Well, the loyalists are now saying, well, why don't we threaten and carry out violence in order to move the border back? It seems to work, a bit of violence. So it's a really, really bad situation. And it's very clear, Lord Frost knows that the protocol basically has got to go unless the EU, wake up, smell the coffee and, scrap some of this ridiculous interpretation of the rules very, very quickly. And I think actually that the protocol really should go in its entirety, Mark, and you replace it with a very simple, well-known and used system called trusted traders between GB and Northern Ireland, and it's job done. And that's what needs to be done. And Boris needs to show some courage, as George Bush might have said, some cojones to get this sorted out.
It's going to be impossible for the EU to protect the integrity of the single market without precipitating a return to the Troubles. If they don't ditch the protocol, Richard, they'll have blood on their hands.
They will, tragically, and we all worry about that. That's why we raised it. It's all completely unnecessary, Mark. There is an existing technological solution. It's called what DHL use. It's what Federal Express use. It's a tracking system, and people who export from both sides of the border, they use that. You can track it, and it's all electronic. If it was good enough for DHL, frankly, it should be good enough for the respective customs people either side of the border. Where there's a will, there's a way. It's really interesting, isn't it, that the predecessor to Leo Varadkar, Enda Kenny, he said, with goodwill and technology, we can sort this out. Regrettably, we didn't get that under Leo Varadkar, and this shambles, frankly, should be laying at his doorstep. But it is still solvable. And it's really important. We move on to the whole issue of regulations. The whole point of Brexit was so that we could be free to make our own choices, free to cut taxes and to cut unnecessary daft EU rules and regulations, which are there by the mountain load, as we all know. And for example, in the City of London, the EU refuses to sign any form of trading deal with the City of London. So the city should say, fine, no worries. Our competition is with New York and with Asia. So do you know what? We're going to ditch the millions of paragraphs and clauses of obscure regulations under the snappy title of MiFID 2, scrap the lot, start again, and then actually the City of London can compete with its real competitors. Because the city's competitors, Mark, is not actually Frankfurt or Paris, as I say.
Singapore.
It's the high growth markets in Asia. It's what's going on in New York. And we've got to be smart. We've got to deregulate. We've got to cut taxes, not raise them. That's the Brexit opportunity. We've got to grasp it. At the moment, Boris is not doing that.
Part of me wishes that Lord Frost were Prime Minister right now, Richard. Do you think there is the political will at number 10 to get out of this EU groupthink and take the Brexit advantage?
I would really like to think so. But I fear that, as in many things, this Tory government, they're very good at talking the talk. It's a bit like Priti Patel with immigration. Lots of fine words, but very woefully short on action. And I fear that, that's where Boris will be at. But if he actually if he says no, we've given it a chance, we're going to ditch it, then I would completely support that. And I think that that is the only way forward. And the EU are on the back foot on this. They completely lost the moral high ground back in January when they themselves, having said that a hard border was an absolute no-no for everybody, who imposes a hard border at the first sign of trouble? Yep, you got it. The EU, Ursula von der Leyen, or von der Leyen as we now call her.
Yeah.
So it's got to change. We've got to show that we mean business. And but let's be clear, we'll keep sending them vaccines, even if they're a threat to cutting off our electricity, Mark.
Because we must keep the moral high ground. We talked about the Brexit advantage. Let's hope that number 10 sees it with both hands, Richard. We've got the vaccine advantage, but there's no evidence of that, with further threats to the lifting of COVID restrictions on the 21st of June, which would be a catastrophe for this country.
It would be devastating. A couple of weeks ago when we were campaigning on the high street, we saw a combination of, half the population is terrified and walking around with masks on out in the open air, even though they've been vaccinated. The other half of the population is furious. And Boris promised us that he would follow the data, not the dates. And actually what he's doing, he's following the dates. He's ignoring the excellent data that is exceeding anybody's most optimistic expectations. It's quite clear the vaccines work. It's quite clear the vaccines do dramatically reduce transmission. And we've got to use that, seize that opportunity, give confidence, show some leadership, give confidence back to the nation and say, let's get back to work. And of course, be vigilant. But, there's always this scaremongering about, some variant from some county or some country. Most people don't realize there are literally tens and tens of thousands of COVID variants that have emerged in the last few months. I'm told there are dozens of Indian variants. Frankly, the reality is it doesn't really matter. What we've always known is that flu, in the same way that flu varies every year and the flu vaccine is tweaked to accommodate and catch up, we've always known that the COVID vaccines would monitor the variants and they would need to be tweaked if a certain variant essentially moved sufficiently that it became a bit less impacted and effective with a vaccine. And that's the reality of life. And that's why real leadership, honest, fair, transparent leadership is required, where you explain to the people, look, this is the way it is, folks. There's nothing to be worried about. We will keep tweaking the vaccines. We urge people to have the vaccine. We're not making it mandatory. It's very simple. If you don't want to have the vaccine, then, and you are of a vulnerable age, you're taking a bigger risk. That's fine. That's on your head, be it. But, there are groups, much, much younger groups, where actually, like children, for example, Matt Hancock stood in the Houses of Parliament, said he weren't looking at vaccinating children. Guess what? They're now looking at vaccinating children. You can't trust this government. We got Nadine Sahari, Michael Gove, Boris Johnson saying we weren't looking at vaccine passports. Guess what? They're desperate to bring in vaccine passports. If you actually read their lips and believe exactly the opposite of what they say, you'll get somewhere nearer the reality of what actually happens. It's not the right way to run the country. People want leadership. People want confidence. People want self-belief. That's the whole purpose of being an independent sovereign nation in a post-Brexit world. And I just keep urging this government, come on, show some leadership, show some honesty, rather than treating us like idiots and wanting to sort of keep us in a state of fear. It's just not the right way to go, and it's going to hold our great nation back, Mark.
Folks, that is what political opposition looks like. Keep up the good work, Richard. Thanks very much for joining us. Richard Tice is leader of the Reform UK Party. That's right, Richard Tice there with strong views. What's your reaction? 03444991000.